They say the old woman who tends the cemetery is mad for talking to the dead, but the truth is far more terrifying. The dead are answering her. For the past 25 years, the villagers of Vergessen have called me the mad old woman of the cemetery, likely because every night they see me whispering to the grave of my daughter, Anya. But they do not know that the tombstone bearing her name is merely an empty monument, just like the 4 unmarked graves beside it. They are shells, concealing a lie this entire village conspired to bury. I have waited for a quarter of a century, waited for someone curious enough, daring enough, to disbelieve the artificial peace of this place. And then came Liam, a journalist bearing his own scars, with the eyes of a man who never accepts an easy answer. I let him see me, let him doubt, let him dig into the past on his own, turning his curiosity into my weapon. Because I know that only when an outsider unearths the truth will Gregor, the esteemed mayor, confess to the crime he concealed for his son all those years ago. They did not just kill my daughter, they buried her right under my feet. For 25 years I have walked this path every single day. My feet know every mound of earth, every gnarled root that breaks the surface. Tonight is no different. The wind blows hard, slipping through the old wool layers and chilling my spine. The storm lantern in my hand sways, its flame dancing across moss-covered tombstones. The people of Vergessen say I am mad. They see me talking to the dead. I hear all their words, but I do not care. They know nothing. I walk past the old mayor's grave, then the baker's wife's. I do not stop. My destination lies at the far end of the cemetery, a corner of earth that no one wishes to visit. There, 5 identical stone slabs stand. They bear no names. I have never allowed a name to be carved upon them. On each stone, there is only an edelweiss, the flower my daughter loved so much. I set the lantern down on the ground. Its faint light illuminates the veins in the stone. I raise my hand, wiping away the night's dew. The stone is ice cold. I touch each one, feeling the chill seep into my fingertips. Then I speak, just loud enough for myself to hear. It is cold again today, Anya. Be patient. The time is near. I say this every night. It is not a prayer. It is a promise. I was trimming the hedges when I heard the sound of a car engine. In Vergessen, that is a strange sound. I look towards the gate and see a silver car parked in front of Mrs. Weber's inn. A man steps out. He is young, wearing a coat, ill-suited for the weather here. I know instantly that he is from the city. I do not think much of it. Occasionally, lost tourists find their way here, stay a day or two, and then leave in a hurry. This village is not a place for outsiders. That evening, as I was lighting the lamps in my small cottage, I glanced out the window. From here, I have a direct view of the attic room at Mrs. Weber's. I see the light turn on. I see the man's silhouette pacing back and forth. Then he stands still by the window, looking towards the cemetery for a long time. I know that look. It is the look of someone searching for something. I extinguish my own light and sit in the darkness. For the first time in many years, I feel something different. It is not hope. I gave up on hope long ago. This is the feeling of a long-set plan finally seeing a piece move on the board. The next day, I see him walking up to the cemetery. He pretends to be looking for a relative's grave. I have seen his type many times before. I am looking for the grave of a distant relative, he says. What is the name? I ask, my shears never ceasing their work. He invents a name. I do not even bother to remember it. There is no one of that name in this village, I say flatly. I look up at him. You are a journalist, are you not? I recognize the eyes of the curious. He seems surprised that I have guessed correctly. He tries to change the subject. I just saw those unmarked graves. They seem unusual. I feel a familiar anger rise in my chest. I suppress it. There are some sorrows that do not need the prying eyes of strangers, I reply, my voice turning cold. It is best you let the dead rest in peace. I turn my back to him, decisively snipping a dry branch. I want him to understand that this is not advice. It is a warning. But deep down, a part of me knows he will not listen. And that is exactly what I need. I know he is watching me each night, because the light in his attic window never goes out until after I have returned home. The presence of that light across the valley makes me feel I am no longer alone in the dark, but not in a comforting way. It is like the feeling of someone reading over your shoulder from a diary you had intentionally left open. Because I know I have an audience, I perform my ritual with even greater precision, never altering a single step. I walk, I pause, I whisper, all part of a play for a sole spectator. Naturally, his nocturnal curiosity leads to daytime questions. He finds me while I am weeding, his tone attempting casualness. This time, he does not invent a story about a long-lost relative. Instead, he mentions the mining accident, proving he has begun his research. I know this is the next step. I tell him it is old history, because I need him to understand that the village considers it a closed chapter. He does not accept this and asks why the graves have no names. That is the question I have been waiting for. I straighten up to look him directly in the eye, so he can see this is no ordinary conversation. I tell him their names have been forgotten and that he should let them be. I must be cold and final, because my resistance is what will confirm for him that there is a secret to be protected. My dismissal is not meant to make him leave, but to give him more reason to stay and dig deeper. When I blocked the direct path, I knew he had only one option left: to walk into the lion's den. In Vergessen, the lion's den is a tavern called Zum Stillen Tal, the Silent Valley. I stayed home that night, but I did not need to be there to know exactly what was happening. I know he would sit at the bar, trying to strike up conversations, and eventually he would mention my name or the graves. The moment those words were spoken, a silence would fall over the room. That silence is not empty. It is heavy, thick with vigilance. It is the invisible wall this entire village has built together for 25 years, and he just walked straight into it. And once that wall goes up, its architect appears. Gregor always appears. I can picture him walking over, placing a heavy hand on Liam's shoulder like a benevolent father. He would smile, but the smile would never reach his eyes. He would speak of respecting the peace, of how the village takes care of its own memories. Gregor's warning is the most crucial piece of the puzzle. The silence of the others is merely a question, but the mayor's words turn that question into an undeniable fact. There is a conspiracy. That night, as the storm began to roll in, I heard the wind whistle through my roof. I knew the storm outside was nothing compared to the one brewing inside Liam's mind. Gregor's warning would not extinguish his curiosity. It would turn it into an obsession. And obsession leads to action. The storm hit just as I predicted. I sat by the window, watching the rain lash against the glass, but my mind was not in my cottage. It was on that hill, with him. I knew he would go out. The combination of his suppressed curiosity and Gregor's veiled warning was like a spark to a powder keg. He had to find the answers for himself, and there was only one place that could give them to him. I was not worried. I had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. I had always kept the earth over those graves loose, never allowing it to become compacted. I had done it for weeks, for months, for years. It was a patient work, a silent preparation for an uninvited guest I knew would one day arrive. A bolt of lightning split the sky, illuminating the entire hill in a flash of white. I held my breath. Through the thick curtain of rain, I could not see him clearly, but I knew he was there. He was standing before Anya's grave. I knew he would choose that one. It is where I spend the most time, where my whispers seem to concentrate. I heard the roll of thunder, drowning out all other sounds. But in my mind I could hear the thud of his shovel hitting the earth. Once, twice. I imagined him realizing how unnaturally soft the soil was. What would he think then? Would he feel the conviction that he was right? That something was wrong here? Then, I knew he would hit the canvas tarpaulin. I had placed it there, deep enough to remain hidden but shallow enough for a determined man to find. That tarpaulin was my first answer to him. I waited. The silence after the thunder seemed to stretch into eternity. I could feel his shock from a distance. I could picture his face, pale in the lightning's glow, his eyes wide, staring into the black void beneath the canvas. That emptiness would scream a truth at him far simpler and more horrifying than any skeleton. There was no one down there. There never had been. The 5 graves I had tended for 25 years, the 5 symbols of the village's shared grief, were all just a lie made of earth and stone. And tonight, for the first time, someone other than me knew it. My plan had begun. The first piece had been moved. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving behind a damp and heavy air. I did not need to find him. He found me. He stood blocking the path to the cemetery, his clothes still stained with mud from the night before. His eyes were bloodshot, not from fatigue, but from a mixture of anger and confusion. He thought he had uncovered a secret, but he did not yet understand what it was. "Those graves are empty," he said immediately without a greeting. His voice was hoarse. "It is all a fraud. What are you doing, Elara? Who are you deceiving?" I looked directly at him. I had to play my part perfectly now. I let my shoulders slump, letting the weariness I had carried for 25 years show on my face. I let my eyes well with tears, but I did not cry. "They are not fake graves," I said, my voice trembling with calculated intent. "They are memorials." I saw the anger in his eyes give way to confusion. This was the moment to plant the story the village had used to deceive itself. I told him about the festival night, about the young people from the village who went to celebrate in the old mine. I told him about the sound of collapsing earth that echoed through the valley. I told him about the hopeless search, about the bodies that were never found. "They are buried somewhere deep in the earth," I finished, my voice thick with sorrow. "We built these graves to have a place to remember them, a place for their souls to return to." I was lying, but in every lie, there is a kernel of truth. There had been a mine collapse. 5 people had died, and one of them was my daughter, Anya. I needed him to believe this story before he was ready for the more terrible truth. I had given him a piece of the puzzle, one that seemed to fit, but I knew it would soon reveal its jagged, ill-fitting edges. He left, but I knew he did not completely believe me. A good journalist never believes the first story he hears. And Liam, despite his faded reputation, was still a good journalist. My grief might be real, but the story of the accident was too neat, too simple. It was like a scar that had been surgically altered to hide a much more horrific wound. I knew exactly what he would do next. He would go to the old village library or search online for any scrap of information that remained. He would dig through dusty archives. He would look for the cracks. And he would find them, because I already knew where they were. I knew he would find the old newspaper articles from 25 years ago. He would read that the investigation into the accident lasted exactly 3 days. 3 days for a tragedy that claimed 5 lives. He would find that absurd. He would read the quotes from the young police chief at the time, who had quickly concluded it was a regrettable accident and closed the case to help the community heal. And when he read the name of that police chief, he would realize something. It was Gregor. The honorable mayor, the man who had warned him to respect the village's memories, was the very person who had buried the truth from the beginning. The first crack in my story had appeared. Now, Liam's suspicion would no longer be aimed at me alone. It would begin to shift towards the man I wanted him to target. He came back to find me that afternoon. This time the anger was gone, replaced by a tense focus. He had found the crack. "Gregor," he said instantly. He was the police chief back then. He closed the case in 3 days. "Why, Elara? Why such a rush if it was just an accident?" He stepped closer. "You know more than you are saying. The memorial story is not the whole truth, is it?" I knew it was time to show him the next part of the truth. Not all of it, but enough to bind him to this story, enough to make it impossible for him to turn back. I looked at him, and this time, I did not have to act. I let the real pain, the pain I had swallowed for 25 years, pour out through my eyes. "One of those 5 graves," I began, my voice raw. "The one in the middle, the one you dug up last night, that was for my daughter." I saw the shock on his face. All the pieces in his head were rearranging themselves. "Anya was my daughter," I continued. "When I whisper every night, I am not talking to faceless spirits. I am talking to her. And I know with every fibre of a mother's instinct that it was not an accident. My daughter and those other children were murdered, but I had no proof. Gregor and this entire village made sure no proof would ever exist. Now he understood. This was no longer just a mysterious story about a strange village. It had become the story of a mother seeking justice for her lost child. I had given him a personal reason to stay, a clear objective. I knew a man like him could not walk away from a story like this. Just as I predicted, Gregor did not remain idle. He had eyes and ears everywhere, and Liam's constant meetings with me and his furtive research had surely reached him. The gentle warning in the tavern was no longer sufficient. Gregor began to act. The next morning, I saw Liam standing by his car, staring at 4 slashed tires. That night, when he returned to his attic room, he found the door broken open, his belongings ransacked. Nothing was stolen, but the message was clear. Get out. The hostility of the villagers also became overt. The bartender refused to serve him. People on the street would look at him with cold, hateful eyes. They no longer saw him as a journalist seeking the truth. They saw him as an outsider trying to destroy their peace, a peace built on a mass grave. I watched it all unfold. Liam was now completely isolated. He was facing a wall built not just of silence but of threats. He could not leave because his car was disabled. He could not stay because his life was in danger. He was trapped, and a man cornered becomes more desperate than ever. That was exactly what I needed. That night, I went to his attic room. I knocked softly on the door. He opened it cautiously, a fireplace poker in his hand. Seeing me, he seemed surprised but also relaxed slightly. You should not be here. They are watching us, he said. I know, I replied. That is why I had to come. You are not going to give up, are you? He looked at me, his eyes filled with determination. No. Then you need to know the truth. The whole truth, I said. I motioned for him to follow me. We slipped out into the darkness, heading back up to the cemetery. But this time, I did not lead him to the fake graves. I led him to an old, dilapidated chapel on the edge of the cemetery, a place even the village children dared not approach. I pushed open the heavy, creaking wooden doors. Inside, the air was cold and thick with the smell of dust and damp decay. Moonlight streamed through broken windows, casting eerie patterns on the rotting floorboards. I lied to you, Liam, I said, my voice echoing in the silent space. Partially. I said their bodies were never found. The truth is, they were never missing. I bent down, using all my strength to pry up a loose floorboard in the center of the chapel. A foul stench of damp earth and decay rose from the opening. I stepped back, making way for him. They are right here. Right beneath our feet, I revealed the final secret. After Gregor closed the case, I knew he would try to dispose of everything. I spent many nights, alone, digging at the mine. I brought them back here, one by one. I hid them where I knew no one would ever look. The fake graves outside. They were just a diversion, designed to attract the attention of someone exactly like you. Liam used the flashlight on his phone to peer into the pit beneath the chapel floor. The light passed over skeletal remains, crudely wrapped in stained white shrouds. 5 lives, lying there, silent and patient. I had cared for this place meticulously, ensuring nothing was disturbed. My God, Liam whispered, his voice cracking with horror. I did not look at him. My eyes were fixed on one bundle. I knelt, my old knee joints groaning. I gently peeled back the cloth covering the skull. It was my daughter, Anya. Even as bones, I recognized her. A mother always recognizes her child. I reached inside the shroud, where I had kept it hidden all these years. My fingers touched a cold metallic surface. I drew it out. It was a silver lighter, tarnished with time. I held it up to the flashlight's beam. Engraved on its surface was a single, ornate, interlocking initial. The letter M. What is this? Liam asked. Proof, I answered. The only thing that was left. I did not need to close my eyes to remember. The memory was always there, as vivid as if it had happened yesterday. That night, I saw Anya and her friends arguing with Marcus at the edge of the forest. near the mine entrance. Marcus was Gregor's son, an arrogant young man. I hid behind a tree, overhearing them talk about money, about some kind of debt. I saw Marcus pull out this silver lighter, an expensive trinket he was always showing off. The argument escalated. I saw Marcus shove one of the boys. Anya and the others rushed to their friend's defense. Outnumbered, Marcus screamed something in a rage and ran towards the mine entrance. I did not understand what he was doing. Then I heard a deep explosion, and the ground shook beneath my feet. I saw him running out of the cloud of dust, his face a mask of panic and malice. The next day, his father, Gregor, in his capacity as police chief, declared it an accident. He looked me straight in the eye, and I knew that he knew what I had seen. His silence was a threat, and the silence of the village was complicity. I clutched the lighter in my hand. "This M is for Marcus," I told Liam. "He was there. He killed them." Just then, the chapel doors burst open behind us. The sound of rotting wood slamming against stone was like a gunshot. Two figures stood silhouetted in the entrance, their shadows stretching across the floor in the moonlight. It was Gregor and Marcus. My heart pounded in my chest, but not with fear. It was with anticipation. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had planned. "Damn you, Elara!" Gregor roared, his voice stripped of its polite facade. "You just never know when to stop, do you?" Marcus, now a respectable-looking middle-aged doctor, was pale. He stared at the skeletal remains on the floor. Liam moved to stand in front of me, a protective reflex, but I gently pushed his arm away. This was my fight. Gregor strode forward, his eyes falling on the lighter in my hand. He let out a contemptuous laugh. "An old lighter? You think that can prove anything after 25 years? It is the word of a crazy old woman against the word of a mayor." I looked him calmly in the eye. "I know," I said clearly. Then I turned to Liam, my gaze falling on the pen clipped to his shirt pocket. I had noticed it the first time we met. It looked slightly thicker than a normal pen. "But the recording device you are wearing can," I said. I saw the shock register on Liam's face. He glanced down at his pen, then back up at me, his eyes wide. Confusion, disbelief, and finally, understanding flashed across his face. He finally realized. He was not the one who had found the story. He was the story. I knew who he was from the moment he arrived. An investigative journalist always has professional habits, always records important conversations. I had guided him, let him see what I wanted him to see, let him ask the questions I wanted him to ask. I had turned him into my instrument, my sole witness, my perfect trap. I had used his curiosity against their lies, and now their own mouths would condemn them. The moment I spoke those words, I saw true panic in Gregor's and Marcus's eyes. They no longer saw me as a mad old woman. They saw me as the one who had set a trap they had just walked into. Gregor lunged for Liam, but it was too late. Liam stepped back, clutching the recorder pen as if it were his only weapon. The confrontation did not last long. Every denial, every threat they uttered from that moment on was captured. That audio file was sharper than any knife, slicing through the curtain of silence they had woven for 25 years. The police were called in from the city. I had never seen so many strangers and vehicles in Vergessen. They cordoned off the chapel. They arrested Gregor and Marcus in the mayor's office. I watched them being led away in handcuffs, past the stunned faces of the villagers. The people who had been silent for so many years could only stand and stare. The lie had collapsed, and it took their false peace down with it. A few looked at me, some with fear, some with hatred, but no one dared to speak. They knew it was time to face the truth. A few days later, a service was held. It was not a funeral, but an acknowledgement. Forensic experts had come and taken my daughter and the 4 other children away. They were given back their names. When they were returned, it was not in hidden shrouds, but in proper coffins. The 5 grey granite memorials were removed. In their place, 5 white marble headstones were erected. For the first time in 25 years, I saw my daughter's name carved in stone, Anya Schmidt. Beside it were the names of her friends. Each headstone had a small photograph, pictures of smiling children, Forever 17. The whole village was there, but the air was no longer heavy with secrets. It was heavy with remorse. Liam was there too. I later read his article. It was a brilliant piece, not just about a murder, but about the weight of silence and the price of truth. He wrote about me, not as a mad old woman, but as a mother. That article gave him back what he had lost. As for me, I had gotten back something far more important: justice for my daughter. The day Liam left, he found me at the cemetery. The sky was clear, the sun brilliant yellow. The sunlight fell on the new graves, making the engraved names shine. I was there, in front of Anya's grave. I had cleaned her photograph and placed a fresh edelweiss before it. He stood a short distance away, saying nothing. He understood that no words were necessary now. I was not whispering anymore. There were no more promises to make, nothing left to wait for. I just stood there, looking at my daughter's smiling face. For the first time in a very long time, I felt a lightness in my soul. The burden I had carried, as heavy as a tombstone, was finally lifted. I turned to Liam and smiled. A real smile, with no pain or calculation behind it. He gave me a nod, an acknowledgement, a thank you, and a farewell. Then he turned and walked down the path that led out of the cemetery and out of Vergessen. I remained, alone, but no longer lonely. I was surrounded by true peace. The evening sun bathed the hill in gold. It was finally over. Anya could rest, and so could I.